It was a regular evening in New York, the streets bustling with life, people going about their business. Ethan Carter, a history teacher at a local high school, was walking back to his apartment after a long day of lectures. His mind was occupied with thoughts of his students, lesson plans, and the occasional thoughts of what he might do over the weekend. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, yet everything was about to change in an instant. The crash happened suddenly. One moment the skyline was clear, and the next, a loud rumble filled the air. People stopped in their tracks, looking up at the sky as an enormous object streaked across the heavens, burning brightly as it descended toward the city. Ethan, too, looked up, his heart racing in his chest. He could hear the distant sound of a siren as emergency responders began rushing toward the site. The object didn't just fall, it landed with a massive thud on the outskirts of the city. The shockwave knocked Ethan off balance, sending him stumbling back. He quickly regained his footing and, like many others, began to run toward the crash site. Curiosity, and perhaps a bit of fear, drove him forward. By the time he reached the site, a crowd had already gathered. The air was thick with tension, the sky still filled with smoke from the crash. Emergency vehicles surrounded the area, their lights flashing, but no one dared approach the wreckage. It was unlike anything anyone had seen before. The craft looked like nothing human. Its surface was smooth, metallic, and almost reflective, like a shard of silver. It was alien, there was no other way to describe it. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't someone who typically got involved in emergencies. As a teacher, his life was filled with books and the minds of students, not emergency situations or science fiction-level disasters. Yet this felt different. This felt real. The crowd murmured, unsure of what to do. No one dared to move closer to the craft. In the chaos, something strange caught Ethan's eye. A movement, something small, darting between the vehicles and people. His curiosity piqued, he moved closer to investigate. There, in the shadows of an abandoned car, stood a child. The child was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Their skin shimmered with a faint, silvery glow, almost like moonlight. Their clothes were elegant, simple yet regal, but the most striking feature was their eyes. They were wide and filled with an intense emotion, something between fear and desperation. The child looked out at the crowd, then quickly turned and darted in the opposite direction, their small form disappearing into the crowd like a shadow. Ethan, still in shock from what he had just witnessed, moved forward instinctively. The child's appearance was unsettling, but there was something about the desperation in their eyes that made Ethan feel a pull, an instinct to protect. Without thinking, he stepped out from the crowd, following the child at a distance. He could hear the child's breath growing heavier as they moved faster. Ethan had no idea what was going on, but his instincts told him that whatever this child was running from, it was dangerous. He quickened his pace, getting closer until he saw the child slip into a small alleyway between two buildings. He followed, keeping his steps light, trying not to alert anyone to his presence. The alley was dark and narrow, the air thick with the smell of the city. Ethan could barely make out the child in the dim light, but he could hear their soft footsteps and ragged breathing. He was about to call out when, unexpectedly, the child turned and looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. The fear in their gaze was enough to stop Ethan in his tracks. "Don't," the child whispered, their voice soft but firm. Ethan froze, the voice was high-pitched and it sounded almost foreign. "Please, don't tell anyone, you have to help me." Ethan blinked in confusion. "Help you?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Who are you? What is happening?" The child didn't answer. Instead, they pressed their back against the wall, eyes scanning the alley as if waiting for something. Ethan, still in disbelief, stepped closer, feeling a sense of urgency building within him. "I don't understand. What's going on?" The child's gaze shifted from Ethan to the street, then back to him. There was a flicker of fear in their eyes, and then, with surprising agility, they darted forward and clung to his side. Ethan's body went stiff with shock as the child hid behind him, their small body pressed against his. It was a strange, unsettling feeling, one that didn't make sense. But the child's fear was palpable. Ethan hesitated. His mind raced with questions. What was happening? Who was this child? Why were they hiding behind him? Before he could react, the sound of heavy footsteps approached from the street. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as several tall figures appeared at the entrance of the alley. They wore dark uniforms, their faces hidden behind visors. They were tall, imposing, and moved with the precision of soldiers. They looked at Ethan, their gaze intense and calculating. "Have you seen a child?" one of them asked in a deep, cold voice. The others stood silently, their hands resting on strange weapons. Ethan's stomach churned. He had no idea who these people were or what they wanted, but one thing was clear: these were not ordinary people. There was something about them, something that didn't fit, and they were looking for the child. "No," Ethan said, his voice shaky but firm. "I haven't seen anyone." The soldier eyed him suspiciously, but didn't say anything further. After a tense moment, the group turned and began walking away, their footsteps echoing in the alley. Ethan held his breath, not daring to move until they were out of sight. When he was sure they were gone, Ethan turned back to the child. "Who were they?" he asked. "What do they want with you?" The child didn't answer immediately. Instead, they looked up at Ethan, their expression somber. "I'm not safe," they said softly. "They want to take me back." "I can't go back. Please hide me." Ethan's heart twisted at the sound of the child's plea. He didn't know what was happening or why, but something told him that this was far bigger than anything he could imagine. Despite his fear, he knew he couldn't turn away. Something inside him urged him to help. "All right," Ethan said, his voice steadying. "You can stay with me, just tell me what's going on. I need to know." The child nodded, their grip tightening around his arm. For a moment, they were both silent, the weight of the situation settling in. Ethan didn't know who or what these people were, but one thing was certain: his life was no longer ordinary. He had just been swept into something much larger than he could have ever imagined. And he had no idea how deep it would go. As Ethan helped the child into his apartment, he looked around, wondering how his life had changed in the span of just a few minutes. The alien child, hidden behind him, was no longer just a mystery. They were his responsibility now. And he would do whatever it took to protect them. Little did Ethan know, this was only the beginning. The child's past was full of secrets, and soon, the entire world would be pulled into a conflict far beyond their understanding. Ethan was about to be at the center of an intergalactic storm, one that would change everything. The night was quiet, but the tension in the air was undeniable. Ethan sat in his small apartment, staring at the child who had quietly fallen asleep on the couch. It had been hours since the strange encounter in the alleyway, but the weight of the situation was still heavy on him. His mind kept replaying the image of the alien soldiers searching for the child, and he wondered who they were, why they were looking for this small being, and what it all meant. The child, whom Ethan had learned was named Orion, looked so fragile, yet there was something about them that felt ancient, wise, and full of hidden power. Ethan couldn't quite place it. Orion had said so little, only that they were hiding from them, and that they wanted to take them back. But to where and why? Ethan's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden ringing noise. His phone vibrated on the table, and he picked it up hesitantly. The caller ID displayed an unknown number. He stared at it for a moment, wondering if it was one of the people searching for Orion. After a deep breath, he answered. "Hello." The voice on the other end was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. "Mr. Carter. We know you have the child. You are not safe, and neither is the child. You will return them to us immediately." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "What do you want from us?" There was a brief pause before the voice responded. "We do not wish to cause harm, but you must understand the consequences of your actions. The child you are harboring is of great importance. They are the heir to a throne you cannot comprehend." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He couldn't make sense of what the voice was saying. "I don't know what you're talking about. I found this child. They need help." The voice was colder now. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. You have no idea what will happen if you do not comply. The child must be returned." Ethan felt the weight of the threat. He had no idea what kind of danger he and the child were in, but the certainty in the voice made him uneasy. He glanced over at Orion, still asleep on the couch, their small form curled up as though trying to make themselves invisible. "I'm not going to hand them over," Ethan said firmly. "I'll protect them no matter who you are." The voice chuckled darkly. "That may be your choice, Mr. Carter, but it will not be without consequences. You have no idea the power that is searching for you right now. We will not stop until we have what is ours." The call ended abruptly, leaving Ethan in silence. His mind raced as he tried to process the conversation. Who were these people, and why did they want Orion so badly? Ethan stood up, pacing around his apartment. He glanced at the windows, his eyes scanning the dark streets outside, wondering if anyone was watching him. He felt exposed. He knew the next steps he took would shape the rest of his life. This was no longer just about helping a scared child. It was about standing up to something much bigger than himself. Just as he was about to sit back down, there was a soft knock at the door. Ethan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. His instincts told him it was one of them, the alien soldiers, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to face them yet. Still, he couldn't hide forever. Taking a deep breath, he walked to the door and opened it slowly. To his surprise, there was no one standing outside. But something on the ground caught his eye. A small, metallic device lay on the doorstep, humming softly with a faint blue glow. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. A message, perhaps, a warning. He picked it up cautiously, holding it in his hand. The moment his fingers touched it, the device sprang to life. A holographic image flickered into existence, and Ethan gasped in shock. It was the face of a woman, an alien woman, regal and imposing. Her eyes were a brilliant shade of violet, and her expression was unreadable. "You have the child," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. "You are mistaken to think you can hide from us, Mr. Carter. The child, Prince Orion, is not meant to be with humans. The Empire has a responsibility to keep the balance of the galaxy, and Orion is key to that balance. Do not make the mistake of thinking you can stand in our way." Ethan swallowed hard. "Who are you? What do you want with Orion?" The woman's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I am Queen Lysandra, ruler of the Elorian Empire. Orion is my son, and I will do whatever it takes to bring him back to me. You must understand, Mr. Carter, that you are not dealing with ordinary beings. The Elorians are not bound by the same laws that govern your world." Ethan felt the weight of her words. "I don't care who you are," he said, trying to sound confident, though his voice trembled. "I'm not giving him up." Queen Lysandra's gaze darkened, her voice becoming colder. "I do not wish for conflict, but I will not allow anyone to stand between me and my son. You have been warned, Mr. Carter. If you continue to protect him, there will be consequences. We will be coming for you." With that, the hologram flickered out, leaving Ethan standing in his doorway, shaken to his core. Queen Lysandra, an alien queen, no less, was offering him a warning. But the words she spoke made it clear that she had no intention of backing down. Ethan didn't know what to do. This wasn't just some strange encounter. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. He couldn't understand it fully, but one thing was clear. His life was no longer his own. He was caught in the middle of an intergalactic conflict that he didn't even know existed. As the night wore on, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stayed up, watching over Orion, who seemed to be in a deep, exhausted slumber. Despite the fear that gripped him, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility for the child. Orion was more than just a frightened kid. They were the key to something bigger. But what? He glanced at the small clock on the wall. It was nearly dawn, and the first rays of light were just beginning to peek through the blinds. He couldn't stay here forever. He couldn't keep running. Eventually, the Empire would find them, and when they did, Ethan wasn't sure they would leave anyone alive. Ethan looked down at Orion, their small form curled up on the couch. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing: he would fight for them, no matter what it took. He had no idea how to protect them from an empire as vast and powerful as the Elorians, but he couldn't let fear control him. The child was depending on him, and he wouldn't let them down. As the sun slowly rose over the city, Ethan made a decision. He couldn't just stay and wait for the Empire to come for him. He had to take action. He had to find a way to protect Orion, no matter what it cost him. The morning after the holographic message from Queen Lysandra, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of his control. His life had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. The quiet, routine existence he had always known had vanished, replaced by something far more complex and dangerous. Orion, the alien child he had found, was not just a frightened runaway. He was the heir to an alien empire, and that made him the target of an unstoppable force. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of lukewarm coffee that he didn't even feel like drinking. His thoughts were racing. He had no idea what he was supposed to do next. All he knew was that he couldn't give Orion up, no matter the cost. The child had trusted him, and now Ethan was responsible for keeping them safe. The apartment was eerily quiet, with only the sound of his own breathing and the soft shuffle of Orion moving in the other room. Ethan had kept the blinds closed, hiding them from the outside world. The last thing he needed was for someone to spot Orion and alert the Aelorian Empire. Every minute that passed felt like a countdown to something inevitable. Suddenly, the sound of a knock at the door startled him. Ethan's heart jumped into his throat. It was too soon for the Aelorians to have found him, wasn't it? He had only just received their warning last night. But here it was, reality slamming back into his life. He slowly stood up, his mind racing with possibilities. Could it be them? Was it finally happening? He hesitated for a moment, then moved cautiously toward the door. He pressed his ear against the wood, trying to listen for any sign of what was on the other side. The knock came again, this time more urgent. Ethan took a deep breath and turned the doorknob. As the door creaked open, he wasn't prepared for what he saw. Standing before him was a woman, a tall figure with dark, flowing hair, dressed in clothes that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. Her eyes were a piercing violet, and her presence was so commanding that Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. "You don't know me, Mr. Carter," she said in a calm, measured voice. "But I know you, and I know what you've done." Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't one of the soldiers. This was someone different, someone higher up. The woman's demeanor was far too elegant to be a soldier, and there was something about her, something that made Ethan feel small and insignificant in her presence. "I don't know who you are," Ethan said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "But if you're here for Orion, you can forget it. I'm not giving him up." The woman didn't flinch. Instead, she simply stepped forward, her gaze fixed on him. "I'm not here to take him," she said. "I'm here to explain." Ethan blinked, surprised by her words. "Explain? What's there to explain? Who are you and what do you want with the child?" "I am Zara," the woman replied, "a former advisor to Queen Lysandra. I know the Aelorian Empire better than anyone, and I know what they'll do to anyone who stands in their way." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "You were with them, and now you're what, helping me?" Zara nodded. "I've had a change of heart. I can no longer stand by and watch the Empire destroy everything in its path. The child you're protecting, Orion, is far more important than you realize, but he is also in grave danger." Ethan was stunned. He had expected threats, violence, maybe even some grand battle for Orion's life. But this was different. He didn't know whether to trust Zara or not, but there was something about her that felt genuine. She didn't look like someone who would be working for the Empire. And her words carried an urgency that made Ethan listen. "Why is he so important?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know you said he's the heir to the throne, but why is that such a big deal? Why can't he just live a normal life?" Zara sighed, her eyes flickering with something akin to sadness. "Because the Empire doesn't work like that. It never has. The Aelorians are not like humans. Our society is built on control, on power. And Orion, as the heir to the throne, is the key to the future of the Empire." Ethan frowned, confused. But if the Empire is so powerful, why does it need a child to lead it? "Because the Empire is dying," Zara said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The Aelorian leadership is corrupt. It's been in decline for centuries. The old rulers, those who used to hold the power, are no longer in control. They're fighting amongst themselves for dominance, and they need Orion to stabilize the Empire. But they don't care about him. They only care about using him as a pawn. They would never let him have a choice. They'd never let him live his life the way he deserves." Ethan's mind was spinning. "So, what are you saying? That if I don't hand him over, the Empire will destroy everything in its path just to get him?" "Yes," Zara said solemnly. "That's exactly what they'll do, and if they don't find Orion, they'll take their anger out on Earth. Earth won't stand a chance against the full force of the Aelorian fleet." Ethan's chest tightened. The weight of the situation was sinking in. He had known this wouldn't be easy, but the truth of it was far more dangerous than he had imagined. He couldn't just hand Orion over. He couldn't let them win. But how could he protect a child, no, an heir to a galactic empire, from an entire army? Zara seemed to sense his thoughts. "There's a way," she said quietly. "I can help you. I know how to get Orion to safety." Ethan looked at her, hope flickering in his chest. "How?" Zara paused for a moment, then stepped forward, lowering her voice. "The only way to protect Orion is to hide him from the Aelorians permanently, and the only place they won't look for him is Earth itself. I can help you get him off-world to a place where no one can touch him. But it won't be easy." Ethan's head was spinning. "And how do you plan to do that?" There's a network of rebels, those who have fought against the Elorian Empire for years. They can help, but it's a dangerous path and there's no guarantee you'll make it. Then why are you helping? Ethan asked. What's in it for you? Zara looked at him with a steady gaze. I'm helping because I can no longer stand by and watch innocent lives be destroyed. I'm helping because the Elorians, no matter how powerful they are, don't get to decide the fate of everyone. And I'm helping because Orion deserves a life of his own, free from their control. Ethan felt a surge of determination rise within him. He knew what he had to do. The stakes had never been higher, and he couldn't let fear or uncertainty control him. If he was going to protect Orion, he needed to trust Zara. He needed to trust that she knew what she was doing. All right, Ethan said, his voice firm. Let's do it. I'll do whatever it takes to get Orion to safety. Zara nodded, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. Then we begin now. As she turned to leave, she paused and looked back at Ethan. Be prepared. The Elorians will not stop, but you've made the right choice. Together we'll make sure Orion has the life he deserves. With that, she left, disappearing into the night. Ethan stood alone in his apartment, his heart racing. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that his life and Orion's were about to change forever. The Elorian Empire had no idea what it was up against, and neither did Ethan. But one thing was certain, he wasn't going to back down. Ethan felt the weight of his decision settling over him like a blanket of cold reality. The world he had known was no longer the same. He had crossed a line and there was no turning back. The stakes were higher than ever. Not only was he protecting a child who was the heir to a galactic empire, but he was also a target for the full force of the Elorian military. Zara's warning echoed in his mind. The Elorians will stop at nothing to get him back. They wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone or anything that stood in their way. And now, Ethan was standing between them and Orion. His heart was racing with anxiety, but deep down, he knew he had made the right choice. He wouldn't hand Orion over to the Empire. The days that followed were a blur. Zara had disappeared after their conversation, leaving Ethan alone with the child. He had no idea where she had gone or what kind of help she could provide, but he had to trust her. He couldn't do this alone. Orion had become more than just a scared child. They had become his responsibility. The bond that had formed between them in such a short time was undeniable. Orion trusted him, and that trust was something Ethan couldn't take lightly. Despite the fear that clung to him like a shadow, Ethan managed to keep a sense of calm. He knew he had to stay focused. The Empire could be anywhere. They could be watching him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The first few days passed uneventfully, but the tension never lifted. Ethan kept the apartment locked tight, not daring to go out for fear of being spotted. He couldn't risk Orion being seen by anyone. Every sound, every movement outside his door sent his heart into overdrive. He couldn't sleep, his mind constantly replaying the words of the Elorian soldiers, the voice of Queen Lysandra, and the chilling message from Zara. And then, on the 5th day, it happened. The sound of a knock on his door sent a jolt of fear through him. For a moment he froze, his breath catching in his throat. He glanced over at Orion, who was sitting on the couch, drawing on a piece of paper. Ethan moved toward the door, his steps hesitant. He didn't know who it could be. He didn't know if this was the Elorians finally closing in on him, or if it was something else, someone else who knew nothing of what was happening. He reached the door and paused, pressing his ear against the wood. The knock came again, soft but insistent. He had no choice. He had to answer it. Slowly, he turned the doorknob and opened the door just enough to peer outside. Standing before him was a man, a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark eyes and a stern expression. His clothes were plain, but there was something about him that made Ethan uneasy. "I need to speak with you," the man said, his voice low and serious. "It's about the child." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The man was talking about Orion, but how did he know? "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling up inside him. "How do you know about Orion?" The man's eyes narrowed and he took a step forward. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his voice calming slightly. "But I need you to listen. The Elorians are closing in, and they won't stop until they have him. We have to move quickly." Ethan felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Who was this man, and why was he suddenly here saying things that made sense but were impossible to believe? "How do I know I can trust you?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. "How do I know you're not working for them?" The man hesitated for a moment before speaking. I was once part of the Elorian military. I'm no longer with them and I'm trying to stop them, but I can't do it alone. You're not safe here, you need to leave. Now. Ethan's mind raced. This was getting worse by the second. First, Zara, now this man, someone who claimed to have been part of the Elorian military. He had no idea who he could trust anymore, but he couldn't afford to turn away help, not when the stakes were this high. I'm not leaving without Orion, Ethan said firmly, looking over his shoulder at the child. Orion had been watching the exchange quietly, their eyes wide with confusion but also a touch of hope. The man glanced at Orion, then back at Ethan. I understand, he said. But listen to me, the Elorians have ways of tracking people, and they're coming for you. You won't survive if you stay here. I can help you get out of the city, but it has to be now. Ethan took a deep breath. His mind was racing. This wasn't how he imagined things would go. But there was no time to waste. He had to make a decision. Orion's safety was his responsibility now. Okay, Ethan said finally. I'll go, but I need your word that you're not working with the Elorians. The man nodded. I'm not, you have my word. Ethan hesitated for a moment longer, then stepped aside, opening the door fully. We'll need to move fast, but we can't leave without a plan. The man stepped inside, his gaze scanning the room. I have a plan, he said, but we need to get to a safe house. It's the only way we'll be able to hide long enough to figure out what to do next. Ethan nodded, then looked at Orion. The child was still sitting on the couch, unsure of what was happening. Orion, we're leaving. You need to trust me, okay? Orion nodded slowly, their eyes filled with uncertainty but also a glimmer of trust. I'll follow you, Orion whispered, their voice soft but strong. Ethan smiled reassuringly, though his heart was heavy with fear. He wasn't sure what was waiting for them out there, but he knew one thing: he would protect Orion with everything he had. The man led them through the apartment complex, keeping his head low and his movements quick. Ethan kept a close eye on Orion, making sure the child was safe as they moved through the hallways. The building felt eerily silent, and every creak of the floorboards beneath their feet made Ethan's heart race. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As they reached the street, the man signaled for them to follow him. Stay close, he said quietly. We can't afford to be seen. Ethan kept a tight grip on Orion's hand as they moved through the darkened streets. The city, once bustling with life, now felt like a maze, dangerous and uncertain. They passed alleyways and street corners, each one feeling more like a trap than the last. Ethan's eyes darted around, looking for any sign of movement. He knew the Elorians were close. He could feel it in his bones. After what felt like an eternity, the man led them to a small, inconspicuous building on the edge of the city. It was tucked away in a quiet corner, hidden from the main roads. This is it, he said, his voice low. We'll be safe here at least for now. Ethan glanced at Orion, whose face was pale with fear. We're safe, Orion asked, their voice trembling. For now, the man replied. But we need to move quickly. The Elorians won't stop searching until they find you. The three of them entered the building, and the man quickly locked the door behind them. Inside, the room was dimly lit, with a few simple pieces of furniture scattered around. There was a sense of urgency in the air, but for the first time in days, Ethan felt a small measure of relief. They were safe, at least for now. The man turned to Ethan. We've bought some time, but it won't last long. We need to figure out where to go from here. Ethan nodded, his mind already racing with plans. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He would fight to protect Orion, no matter the cost. They had made it this far, and he wouldn't stop until the child was safe. And somewhere deep inside him, he knew this was just the beginning.